Hi. When I first released this video, there's a scene in which I had my daughter helping me steam bend some wood, and the operation was a failure. Now, some of the viewers commented that I was being a jerk to my daughter and blaming her for that failure. Now, I want to assure you that that was absolutely not the case. It was a misinterpretation of the scene, and if you were to watch closely, you would see that I was cajoling her in a more playful manner, and there were actually smiles on our faces. But in reviewing the footage, I can see how that scene would have been misinterpreted, and my apologies for that. Now, I have a very close relationship with my daughters, and when they help me out in the workshop and things go awry, we always take the time to look at how they're doing something and try and find a constructive and creative way to move through their problems. Now, I apologize to any of you who are offended by this scene. I don't want you to get the wrong impression about me or my family dynamic. We're close and supportive and loving, and that's the way we always are. Now, I've edited down that scene and trimmed out some of the material that made it seem controversial. I'm not trying to create a smokescreen here or anything, which is why I'm here on camera telling you exactly what I did. So once again, I apologize if I offended anybody. I certainly don't want that to be the case. And here is a slightly edited version of the same video. Oh, I'm having trouble getting it together today, folks. I'm Mark Rutan, and this is Nomad Boatbuilding, and we are working on the 2.4 meter project. So in the last video, we bent our first portion of the coaming in place, and that's just a longitudinal layer that runs all the way around the inside of the deck carlins. We got that glued in, and that's looking great. I'm really happy about that. Now, there's a second layer that goes in, and I had every intention of making that second layer out of plywood. But when it came right down to it, I didn't like the idea of having this plywood elements showing, and I just finished doing all that decking, right? So I had all these little bits and pieces of scrap lying around from the offcuts of the decking job. So I thought, let's carry that into the coaming as well. And so I made these little, not vertical pieces, but they're all sort of kicked forward at the same rake as the forward end of the coaming. And so they just sort of go right across the inside and they march all the way around. And as they come towards the back, they start to straighten back out. So as you get right around the back of the coaming, they're running vertical, and then they start kicking forward again as you come towards the other side, forward end of the coaming. So I'm really sorry I did not get this stuff on camera. And I need to remind you that building boats is my primary activity. Making these videos is something I squeeze in around the fringes of doing that. And sometimes I just cannot get everything on camera, or I'm just don't want the camera running. I just don't want to have a day with a camera in my face. So I'm afraid that was one of those days. However, we'll pick up where I left off with that project, trimming it down and then moving forward. And the focus of today's video is bending a lip onto that coaming, and it seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Well, just a little tiny piece of whippy stuff wrapping around that coaming. Well, sometimes the simplest stuff can be the most challenging, and this was one of those times. So join me for the fun, and I'll see you later on in the video. Let's get to work.
The cockpit coaming is coming along. I still got a little more trimming to do, so I had to stop the router when I was trimming the bottom here because I've got the knees here, and I didn't want to bang into those and mess those up, so I stopped short. I'll clean those up by hand. Similarly, back here there's a transition from where the deck beam sweeps around here and then it interacts with the deck beam that crosses right over, and it's not quite 100% even, so I'm going to fair those in by hand as well. Everything else looks pretty good. I don't usually stick my monogram someplace so prominent. Usually I sort of carve it into the stem or stern knee or something, but since all that stuff is buried, I didn't do that. You know, it's fairly reserved. It's still going to get a builder's plate here. This is more like my signature. So now I'm going to make up some sort of trim that's going to go on here, and I'm just pondering what the best course of action is for that because I don't have a ton of space here, so I don't want to make it too deep, but I do want it wide enough that water coming along here hits it and gets thrown back off. I think it's going to be about like 3/8 of an inch tall at this point, plus I'll cap it with another 1/8 of an inch, so it'll be 1/2 inch tall, and I want it to be about 1/2 inch deep, I think. So I'll play around with that idea next. So much of doing stuff like this is just all about working by feel. I can't see in there. I don't have an inspection mirror on hand to check it. So you just got to go by feel. There we go. That's feeling pretty good. Okay, we're going to bend in our cockpit lip. We've got some mahogany. It's been in the steamer here for about 1/2 an hour. Oh yeah, that's good and hot. That's good and hot. Ooh, 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 ooh. Ow, 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 ow. I was really hoping I would have an extra pair of hands, but nobody's around the house at the moment, so it's just me. So it's going to be fast. Be careful. Come on. That's it. This is sort of a rectangular piece of material, which makes bending that much more difficult. It's got to bend on edge. That's where I get really nervous, right here. Ah, shit. Ah! Feel it lost its heat. Skinny pieces of wood that are dry to start with. Ah, that annoys me. Alright, well, start from scratch. Got another one. So what's going to happen is I got something coming out of the steam box that looks something like this, okay? It's smoking hot. So you're going to be up here, but I got to get the bend in it back here really quickly. So you're going to be leaving about a couple inches past the end. Okay, your first job is just make sure you get a clamp on there fast. Okay, don't bash up this. You can turn it this way if you like. And I'm going to be back here getting a clamp on it back here because I need to get this bend going fast. As soon as I get a clamp on here, you just make sure you get a couple in up here, okay? And then quickly follow up behind me. Make sure you got the clamp in your hand, okay? And we're going to work our way around this. But it's important that I, like I say, get this bit really quickly. So make sure you follow me quickly, all right? Out, out. Keep going. Have that tight spot. Ah!
Okay, there are 3 things that have been screwing me up on this little activity. The first one is that the material I'm working with is kiln dried. Now, I can't avoid that because it's mahogany. We don't get any other kind of mahogany here in North America. Second is that I haven't been soaking it long enough. Because it's such a small part and it's kind of holding up the process, I've been impatient. And so I've only been soaking it in my tank for, I don't know, just a few hours. And obviously I need to soak it a lot longer. Third, trying to get the material from the steam box and onto the boat fast enough before it cools is obviously been very challenging because it's such a small skinny part. And I've been unsuccessful at that several times now. That means we got to change up techniques. So what I'm going to do is use what's called a boil in the bag or steam in the bag technique. Those of you who watch Tips from the Shipwright will recognize this, and I've used this for quite a few years. It's a common technique in the boat building trade when you don't have a steam box that's big enough for the part you want to work with, or you need to steam something in place. So Lou didn't invent it, neither did I, but we all use it in different ways. Lou uses it in an interesting way when he wants to quickly season a green piece of material that's large and chunky and would take an exceptionally long time to air dry. Basically, he's boiling the moisture out of the core of the wood and forcing it to season. And I have done that as well. I use that when I'm building lap strike boats and I can't get particularly dry wood. Often I have wood custom cut for that, and if I don't have enough lead time of just letting that material lying around to get seasoned naturally, I use a similar technique, or I don't use the bag, but I will over steam those planks. I'll steam all the planks regardless of whether or not I need that steam to get them bent in place, because that steaming process actually will drive some of that internal moisture out, and it kind of, it's almost like moist kiln drying. Anyhow, let's get back to our own project. We're going to get some new stock into the soaking tank, and we're going to leave it there a whole lot longer, and then we're going to play around with boiling in the bag. Let's get to it. I'm soaking some material. I'm going to let it to soak overnight, and we'll try bending again, and I'll probably do a bend it in the bag method. I found I was not getting from the steam box to the boat fast enough without it cooling off too much by the time I got to the point that I'm actually bending. So we'll have to try a different method. While the deck is just raw, I would like to have something on it so it's sealed up, so any moisture from that bending operation isn't affecting the deck. I don't want any water stains. So that's why I decided to put a coat of finish on it right now. And in this case, we are using epoxy basically as a finish. Okay, I know I just said that we're going to use epoxy as a finish. Now that's not quite true. What I mean is, for the moment, we're going to seal the deck with epoxy because we're using an encapsulation technique. Now, encapsulation means that everything gets coated in 3 layers of epoxy, and then it gets finishes added on top of that. So we end up with many, many more layers of finish on top of the whole boat, but we start with epoxy in this particular project, and that's to keep any water that is generated through the steaming process from staining this nice mahogany neck. Okay, let's keep going. So the boat's been prepped. It's been sanded to about 320. I wouldn't normally sand it that far, but I thought I would do it anyway. And part of that reason is I wanted to get really fine dust down into the pinholes, any of the staple holes and things like that, as best I could. Now, normally I would vacuum off the deck. I didn't do that because I wanted to keep that material in those holes so that it becomes filler, basically. Wiped it down very carefully several times with alcohol just to take the material off the surface, any dust on the surface, but leaving stuff still in the cracks here and there. Now, time to make up some epoxy. So I've got my work area prepped, alcohol, rags, a paint tray, roller, and these are the West System rollers that I use because they are designed not to break down from the solvents and the epoxy, and a couple of squeegees cleaned up. I clean up the edges with a block plane because they will get rough as you use them, and keep a couple of them on hand because you might drop one. I use my drill press for mixing whenever I'm doing sort of a wet out operation because it's going to mix nice and slow and thoroughly, much slower and more thorough than I'm going to do it if I'm doing it by hand. And if I use a hand drill, I'm probably going to be mixing too fast. So I use the drill press, I put it on the slowest speed, we drop the quill down as far as we can till this little stirring wand I make is just a hair off the bottom of the mixing pot. And then we just leave it sitting there for a while, and I'll usually, once I'm up and rolling and I'm working on the boat, I'll get another one going and have it mixing while I'm working on stuff, so that when I'm ready for it, I just come over here and grab it. Now this can is almost done, so I've got another can ready to go, and I'm just going to start by switching to the fresh can right away. Also, because I've been heating the fresh can up, I want my epoxy warm so it's as thin as possible. So I've had this sitting on a small heater to warm up. I don't want it hot, but I want it warmer than the ambient air temperature down here. So we'll just start by gloving up. And I've got a few oddball spots on the boat that need some attention.
like the inside of the cockpit coaming and the inside of the hatch. So I think I'm just going to start with just a small batch of just a couple of shots, and we'll get the ball rolling with that. And then I'll mix up a larger batch to do the actual deck. So better to not mix up too much, just do the smallest amount you can get away with at first. I'm going to guess I only need a couple of pumps. So I'm just going to try and make sure this guy is primed, just by gently giving it a few gentle pushes until I see a drop or two come out, then I know the pump is primed. So we're trying to avoid air bubbles in here. Whenever you change a pump, there's a good chance it's going to get air bubbles. And I'll also give it a little back pressure as I lift it up, just to help it to draw in epoxy at a controlled rate. Sometimes if it draws it in too fast, you'll get air bubbles. I don't do that all the time, just when I've changed out the pump. And then we're using this special coatings hardener. So we're just going to go 2 pumps. There you go. So that's our mix. I'll set it up on the drill press and we'll get that mixing. Okay, make sure I'm not touching bottom, and we fire it up. And done right, this will start to walk its way around and the wand will work its way into the corners. Sometimes when you get it set up just right, it does that automatically. See, if I do that, it just slowly spins it around. Just going to hit some of these smaller nooks and crannies with the brush where the roller is not going to reach. There we go. That looks great. Take this all the way around the back. I wanted to do this now as well because as soon as the trim goes on, it gets really hard to deal with wetting out and sanding out these little nooks and crannies on cockpits. This is something I discovered a long time ago doing kayaks with sort of low cockpit hoops and a deep lip. Okay, I'm just going to start along the edge here and just work my way around the whole boat. Notice that I not only added some masking tape to mask off where we're going to do the wetting out, but I also added this little gutter. And that's just to protect against any unseen drips that might happen. But I'm hitting the deck right now, or the edge of the deck right now, partially because it'll encourage me to not try and run off the edge in a bit when I got a much more heavily loaded roller. So I'm using a lighter coating on my roller while I do this. Now I've got about a 1/4 inch reveal onto the hull sides, and that's on purpose. My goal is to sort of feather out the coats, so I'll probably I might move the tape down for a second coat, or move it up so that it sort of staggers this hard line here. And by doing that, I should get a much more even coat. And here we go. So I expect I'm going to give this the once over. The roller, I think I'll probably grab the squeegee and give it a run. Put a run across the whole thing with the squeegee just to force epoxy down into pinholes and things like that, and then give it another top off with the roller after that. That sure looks pretty. Sure looking pretty. The first coat of epoxy is on here. I'm getting a lot of air bubbles popping up. I was hoping I wouldn't get that, but nothing I can do about it. I tried chasing them out with a torch, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And I guess just it's probably the porous nature of the wood here that's causing it, but it is looking sharp, man. I am liking this. So my plan here is to steam this in place using the plastic bag method, which I don't typically use a lot. I mean, I use it when I absolutely have to, but there's only certain occasions where that's really practical. As much of a no-brainer as it seems, screwing around trying to get a plastic bag on your stock and in place and then get it off when you need it to can be a real pain. So I don't use it too much. But I do use it some. And so we're going to use it in this case. So my plan is to bag this thing and clamp it in place, starting right here with my clamps set up tight. And probably I can get it around cold to about yay, but it's back here that the real tight bend happens, and it's back here. This is where it would break every time on me when I was trying it before, which is not surprising, but it's certainly frustrating. Anyhow, so we'll wrap this guy all the way around with the bag still in place is my plan. And we'll bring it all the way around this side, and then up here where the two come together, they're gonna have to overlap a little bit. And this is the one area I'm a little concerned about, trying to get the what I'm concerned about is it drawing with an oddball shape happening here and the wrong twist, because the bag's in place and because they have to overlap. But hopefully it'll work out. And we'll let that cool for a while, and then when I'm confident that everything's going to stay put and not blow apart on me, we'll debag it and make sure it's sitting in the right position, cut it to fit, and then I think I'll do the shaping of it, like the molding of it for shape after that. So that's the plan. We'll see if it works. So I've got this tubular bag that they actually make for as sort of a temporary gutter downspout. Trying to get this bagged without ripping the bag in half in the process. There we are. Okay, there we are. I want to make sure my grain orientation is correct. So I just have a quick look at that. Okay, right off the bat, I know I can see I need to move my whole boat forward here because my steamer is right up against the back wall. Now, in a perfect world, I would actually have this clamped across the back so that I'm bending in both directions.
But I wouldn't be able to fit that. If I did that, I wouldn't actually be able to fit that in the shop. And that's one of the downsides of a small shop. So that clamp is just to keep this thing from flying. Come on, here we go. So let me give myself a few inches of overhang, and so, come on. I need to be careful to use soft jaws on here just to make sure I'm not damaging the bag itself. Come on, get on there. So one place I really do actually use this method a lot is when I'm doing canoe gunnels, because canoe gunnels are frustrating things to deal with, especially certain chestnuts. They're very flat through most of the length of the boat, and then they flare up suddenly near the ends, quite radically. So there's our setup for now. I might throw another couple clamps on. I'll get some more clamps ready. This is just to keep this thing from falling off the boat. And then over here, we've got the steam generator. Man, I hope this thing can make the swing around the shop. I'm gonna have to make sure I've got the boat unclamped from the dolly, or have the dolly be able to roll in case I need to swing this over. I might do that right before bending, we'll see. In fact, I think I should probably do that right now, so I'm going to angle the whole thing a little more. So let's just shift this guy over. See, I need to make sure I can get this guy to swing all the way around without smacking into the walls, which is going to be the tricky part. Okay, I think that'll do it. So we'll bundle all this up. I might have to actually make sure this terminates over my bucket so it can drain into it. That would be smart. Okay, and I think we'll come up with something to hold this up. You'll find my workshop is just chock-a-block with screws from the ceiling absolutely everywhere just to facilitate stuff like this. So we've got this thing holding that up. I might have to do a little something to hold up the... Oh, come on. Stay put. We'll do the same for the hose on the steamer itself, I think. I likey, I likey. All right, let's plug her in. Can I reach? Does it reach? Oh, come on. There we go. So we got the steamer up and rolling, but I don't have a ton of confidence in this. Near as I can tell, it's smoking hot right back by the steamer, but up here, we're just barely lukewarm right here where I need it. So I think I need to move the steamer up to connecting up here, which I'm not even sure how easily I can do. But this is not going to cut it. I'm going to end up with the other end being just cooked to blazes and falling apart, and then this end up here is going to be barely able to steam. So there's just too much distance between the steamer and up here, and the steam's just not making it before it's cooled off, which is kind of what I was expecting might happen. So it works when you can put the steam right close to the source of the bend, but if you can't get it there, well, things start to fall apart on you quickly. So I'm going to have to rejig this and come up with a better way to do it. Okay, so I think there's our first bend. Our second bend's probably about there. So I guess I'm not sure what to do. Drop the steam right in the middle of it, or put it back behind it. I really don't know. I think we'll come, maybe we'll go right in the middle and hope it just goes in both directions. I'm just gonna slip my tube a little bit here, and I got this extension tube onto my steamer. So what we can do to stuff it in the hole. Okay. Something to hold the tube up. I want to cook my deck here. I'm not too sure what to do about that. All right, try that. Plug her back in. And we'll see what happens. Okay, getting heat back here, that's good. All right, I guess I'm probably safe to put the timer on it. Thinking 15 minutes maybe, 20 minutes, something like that. All right, here we go. So kill the power. I think we're good. Man, I hope we're good. Drain the water here as best we can quickly. Come on, get out of there. All right. And we're not going to be able to get it all out, but okay. And here we go. Just going to apply tension. Oh man, this is tricky. This is tricky. It's really hard to see what I'm doing. This stupid plastic bag. I don't like this method so much. It's like I'm working blind here. Right. Oh, man, come on. Trying to do this.
walking the clamps down here, making sure that we got a nice tight fit. All the way around that bend. And the big trick is that this thing wants to twist out of plane as you bend it around, right? So that is one of the difficulties as you're doing this. It's not wanting to lay straight. Like right here, this guy is wanting to roll inwards, despite the fact that I want it to go the exact opposite direction. I'm just going to add a buttload more clamps just to make sure that it's rolling the way we want. That's it. I managed to get water all over the place, of course. But at least I got that piece on in one piece, which is what I wanted. So let's just hope I don't screw up cutting the joint in the end to bring it all together. That is the next trick. All right, lunchtime.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up there, folks. Now, we had some hair-raising moments along the way, but we finally got this coaming lip bent in place. And steam bending is tricky at the best of times. It really comes down to the quality of your stock, how moist it is, and how quickly you can get it from the steam box onto your work. And the smaller that material is, the faster it loses heat. It's just like blacksmithing. It seems hard to blacksmith big chunky stuff, but in fact, in some ways, it's easier to smith big chunky stuff than it is to smith little tiny whippy things that cool off really quickly. Now, please join me next time. We're going to finish building the lip onto this coaming and make it all nice and pretty. So, thank you all for watching. Thank everybody on Patreon who helps support this channel and everybody else who shares and likes and subscribes and all that stuff. And I'll see y'all later.